Hey YouTube, it's Marita and welcome to another edition of the Nurse Lounge. Today we have a video request by a viewer who basically wants to know, what does a nurse educator do all day? Like what are their hours? What do they do? How do they interact with students? What do they do? How much time is spent doing what? So if you also want to know what a nurse educator does full time, then please stay tuned. All right, so we're going to jump right on in. I'm going to read to you the question that this viewer asked, and then I'm going to answer the question accordingly. So the actual question was, what does the schedule of a nurse educator look like? How many hours do you work? How much time is spent interacting? I'm assuming with students. But things along those lines. What is it typically like? So it depends. So it depends on what level nurse educator you are. So if you are, let's just go with a baccalaureate, someone who teaches at the baccalaureate level, someone who teaches baccalaureate nursing students, BSN nursing students. So, because you can have LPN students, you could have CNAs, you can have the LPN to RN program, you can have the 2-year program, the 4-year program, the MSN program, and then your DNP programs. And then you can have bridge programs and things like that. So we're going to just keep it simple and kind of talk about in general what that schedule will look like, because depending on where you teach at and what level you teach, your schedule could look different. Some programs are some programs are year-round. Like LPN programs are year-round typically, so they're enrolling all the time. Some programs enroll once a year. Some programs enroll twice a year. Some programs are only spring. Some programs are spring and fall semesters only, or there's no summer classes for nursing students. So it just depends on the program. So we're going to use a general traditional BSN program as our example for this. So in general, nurse educators are 9-month employees. They typically work from fall, August-ish, to May. They do not work typically in the summertime or have to work. Sometimes there's classes available that need to be taught in the summertime, and they ask for volunteers who would like to teach this summer, as an example. And if you do want to teach this summer, of course you get paid for it and so forth. However, most of the time you're only a 9-month employee, again, from August till May. So you are salaried, meaning you make so much money per year, and they, as all educators or most educators, you would elect to have your pay divided by 12 instead of divided by 9. That way, during the summertime, you can get paid during the summer and not actually work. Now, if you do work at the university and teach, you will get a separate check for that additional time. Or some instructors, professors, whatever, take that time off to go vacation, do things like that. And some actually, as far as nurses, actually go work in their actual specialty area. So they work at the hospital, get hours there to make either extra money or just to keep their skills abreast. So that wasn't a question that he really asked, but I just wanted to go ahead and throw that in there. That as a 9-month employee, you still get paid for 12. You just divide your check by 12 instead of by 9. So, and then you have the ability to work in the summertime. Now, what is a typical day? Basically, how many hours a day? So hours per day, you are required to work about up to 40 hours per week. Most institutions will give you something like a professional day, which means you would take one day that week where you are going to work on either your scholarly work, you're writing your book, you are in practice still, so you go to work at your clinic or hospital, wherever you work at. You have a day that you do that typically. Again, this is a traditional program. There's variations to this. Outside of that, you will work pretty much an 8-hour day. You'll come in roughly around 7 something in the morning, depending on what time your classes are, what time you teach. It just depends on that. But you'll come in the morning and you will either advise students, you will grade papers, you will answer emails, you will make tests, grade tests, you will create activities for the students to do. You will do all kinds of things when you're not in class. So when you're not in class, you're actually preparing for another class, or you're grading papers, or you're answering emails, you're doing those types of things. When you're actually in class, you are actually lecturing and doing activities with students. Also, majority of the time, full-time faculty are responsible to go to clinical with students. So you'll also have a day of clinical. Now, if your clinical day happens to be a 12-hour day, then that particular day will be 12 hours versus your 8-hour day. It just depends on how your program is set up. So you'll have either a 12-hour day, 8-hour day, 6-hour day, depending on how clinicals are set up and based on how many classes you're teaching. Now, most instructors have what's called a 15-hour workload, meaning if every class is worth 3 credit hours, just for an even number, or not even number, for an easy number, and you have a 15-hour workload, that means you're teaching like 5 classes, okay? So you're very busy between all your classes in terms of, teaching, getting materials together, getting tests together, answering emails, all that for about 4 to 5 classes. Now, he commented on a video that's probably over a year old. I think it was made in January or so of 2019. So this was a video that he was watching, and I was in school at the point in time. I'm now out of school since then. I've now not officially, but graduate next month, June. And if you're watching this, if the person who sent this watches, I'm now graduated, and I'll actually go into this role that we're talking about in the fall, full time. So my typical day, even for now, as an example, I've already been offered the job. I have to set up my own courses. So once I sign on the dotted line, meaning that I actually officially okay, you are now hired, you're employed here, even though I've been offered, I will have to go set up my classes, create the shells, put everything up online, do my syllabus, put that together, work on the curriculum for the class, prepare lectures and activities for the whole semester. We have a 16-week semester, and take out fall break and take out exam week. That makes it a 14-week semester in which I have to get materials ready for that. In addition to that, like I said, grading papers or assignments, things like that, advisement of students, issues with students. So students have problems, they come to you. Those types of things are things that I will have to do. How much time do you spend interacting with students? I would say it's pretty modest amount of time, because you are spending time with them in clinical. Typically you spend every day that you have class in class with these students, and you know them by name. You begin to learn personalities pretty quick. You begin to learn who is your stronger students versus who are your weaker students. You learn those things pretty quick. And even as a clinical instructor, when I did that for 15 years, I could pick up pretty quick on okay, this one right here, this one's going to be good, or this one's going to need a little bit more help. And I would even go back to the actual instructor and say, or professor, and say, hey, this student is having these issues in clinical. What kind of issues do you have in class? And then she would usually confirm, yeah, they have that problem. So it doesn't take long to pick up on student personalities and things like that. So you spend a lot of time getting to know your students, and you know their names, to a certain degree their history, problems that they may be having, personal problems they may be having, because they've either come told you about them, or typically they go tell you about them, or somebody else has told you about them, or maybe they told another instructor who has passed it on to you that, hey, they have a disability that you need to watch for, or we need to provide for. So usually we know about those things. So what else? You are required to be on committees. So faculty development committees, admission committees, curriculum committees, so many committees that you're required to be on. And so you have to do that in addition to your workload, in addition to the grading the papers and things like that. Now, I could already tell you as a clinical instructor, everything was not done on campus, so to speak. Everything's not done in your office. You bring a lot of work home with you. And for me, I would just have to pick a time in which I would do things and not do things. So like grading care plans and grading, doing evaluations, that's done on my time. So that wasn't done necessarily on campus or things like that. And due to the whole COVID situation, a lot of things were done online or via Zoom. Also, interesting point, when things go awry and you can't be on campus, you have to come up with creative ways in order to conduct and have class and to conduct and have clinical. And we had to improvise and come up with ways that we could still engage students in clinical learning via Zoom. That was very difficult to do. Not only that, you are going to also at some point in time be a mentor yourself. So maybe a new faculty member that's coming into the role of faculty, and you may have to show them, how to do things. And you have to take them under your wing and just kind of help them along the way. So there's a lot of interaction with your faculty peers as well. You tend to rely on them heavily for help, for insight, how to handle these problems. Luckily for me, I've been working at this institution as a clinical instructor for 3 years. So now that I'm moving into a full-time role, I kind of already have an idea of the lay of the land and how things work. But now we're going to expand upon that role and actually get into the full-time education side of my new role. So instead of me just doing clinical, I'm doing clinical and didactic. I'm creating my own test. I am learning how to write test questions. That's another thing you have to do. Learn how to write test questions, and you have to analyze them to see if they are actually measuring. Are they valid and reliable? Are they measuring what they're really supposed to measure? Are you preparing them for NCLEX? Truly. We have to have meetings with, the whole university. So not only as an educator do you have to have meetings within your School of Nursing, you have to be on committees, shall I say, within the School of Nursing. You're also on committees that are university wide or institutional wide. So you may have an advisory committee for the whole institution, for the whole school, for the whole university. And you have to sit on one of those committees as well. So you have to be a part of the School of Nursing. In addition to that, you have to be a part of the larger body of the university or whatever institution that you're working at. And you have to go to meetings, faculty development meetings at a larger scale. They send you on seminars, workshops, things like that will help better educate you, prepare you, and keep you abreast of the latest information regarding higher education, regarding nursing specific. Or for me, I'm an OB nurse, so maybe if there's an OB seminar or webinar, something like that I need to go to, then they would probably send me to that, and we would do that. Now, on the flip side of that, you do have the luxury of having breaks like fall break that the school has. You have your winter break, which is your holidays in terms of, Christmas break. And then, of course, you have your spring break and you have your summer break if you choose to take the summer break off and not work. Or you can work, like we discussed earlier, and make some extra money. For me personally, I'm so used to working, I would rather just go ahead and work and make the extra money and have that as a some extra money just to help with back to school for the kids and things like that, or to help plan trips for them when we go to the beach and do fun things like that. In addition to that, as an educator, you could also work online. So I plan to, after I get my 1-year experience, going ahead and finding a job, a nursing program, like maybe WGU or Chamberlain or Walden or one of those types of institutions that are online, where I can also teach online and make some extra money. So maybe as an example, if I choose maybe not to work on campus during the summer, but pick up an online job during the summer, I can still work, make money, and still travel with my kids and have a normal summer and still get two checks, one from my main institution and then the other one from the job that I'll have during the summer if I wanted to do that. And again, as I said, I could always go work at the hospital and, get my experience, or not get my experience, but keep my experience up at the hospital doing that. Let me make sure I actually answered all his questions. Let's see. So basically, you can prepare to spend a great deal of time at your School of Nursing, at your program, at your building, you spend a lot of time there. You probably spend more time in your office, maybe. It depends on how many classes you teach. Let's just be, straight up. If you're a full-time faculty, you're going to have a full-time workload, which is maybe about 5 classes. If you're a part-time faculty, you're going to have a part-time workload, which may be 1, 2, 3 classes. It just depends. With me being an OB instructor, because I have a DNP, my doctorate at this point in time, I'm able to teach anything from MSN level, or actually from DNP level on down. So I can teach LPN students, 2-year and 4-year RN students. I can teach MSN students, and I can teach DNP students. So I can teach all levels. Before I got my DNP, I could only teach what's below you. meaning I could only teach BSN and LPN students. That was it. Now that I have the DNP, I can teach everything. Now, the only caveat to that is when it comes to MSN students, I cannot teach FNP students because I don't have an FNP. I'm a nurse educator. So if there was a general, all programs have core classes. I have you have your class that everybody takes. So in the MSN program, if it's a core class like health policy, something that everybody takes, I could teach that class, but I could not teach the FNP class. But if they had a nurse education program, I could teach all the classes in the nurse education program. But again, like I said, I can't teach the FNP classes. I can teach, when it comes to your traditional BSN program, I can teach all classes that are not specialties. So I could not teach, as an example, critical care, things like that, because I'm not a critical care nurse in real life. I can teach OB, I can teach peds, because I've done peds, but I can't teach I told you home health. I can't teach psych, as an example, because I'm not a psych nurse. But I can teach fundamentals. I can teach research. I can teach pharmacology. I can teach assessment, because every nurse should be able to teach that. Even a registered nurse should be able to teach assessment. A registered nurse should be able to teach pharmacology. So I can teach all of those things. So they'll place you in classes like that, if that makes sense. Also for me, we have a class called Nursing 1000, which is like a pre-nursing elective course. So this course is designed for those who truly think they want to go into nursing, but they have not committed to the program yet. So it's like an intro into nursing, but anybody could take it. So maybe you're not going to declare nursing as your major. You just need an elective and you're like, oh, I want to see kind of what nursing's about. This class is one of the classes I'll be teaching in the fall. And I helped put together this class. So I'm pretty excited about this class that I have spent probably about a good 5 or 6 weeks learning how to create rubrics, which you'll have to do, create activities with descriptions to them. You have to be able to know what your student learning outcomes are. You have to know what your program learning outcomes are. And you have to know what the institutional learning outcomes are. You have to know what the Tennessee, well, I say Tennessee Board of Nursing because I'm in Tennessee, but you have to know what your Board of Nursing requirements are. And you have to make sure that what you're doing ties into all of that. So you can't just sit there and say, I'm going to have them do this assignment just willy-nilly, and it doesn't tie to any kind of outcomes, course outcomes, or competencies. If it doesn't tie into anything, your data as a school of nursing will not reflect what they should be learning, because it's like, okay, well, we want them to have this when we come out of school. But if you don't reflect that, then you have, in essence, wasted your time, and your scores could go down as a result. We want to make sure that the students are learning what they're supposed to learn so they can actually go take that NCLEX when it's time and be successful on it. Also, you have to proctor exams. So you have to, like the ATI, or maybe y'all use the HESI, or I don't know what kind of programs you all use, but you have to proctor those exams and make sure that they are actually meeting the competencies and scores they have to have for that. You have to remediate students. So students who are not successful, you have to come back and say, okay, let's see, were they not successful because of me? Because of the fact that I didn't give good test questions? Is it because I didn't teach the material well? Is it because, what is it? Why did they not do success? Why were they not successful on that test? So we have to figure those things out by doing a test analysis to see, based on the questions that was missed, how many students missed that question, and basically what we're going to do about that. You know, in terms of should we throw that question out? Was it a good question to begin with? Those types of things. Were they just not listening? Did they just miss that whole thing? What is it we need to do to remedy the situation? So hopefully this gives you a good glimpse into what a nurse educator's role is. Again, there's clinicals, there's paperwork, there's papers. You spend a great deal of your time. I will say this, you have to love education. You have to love educating the nursing students. And for me, that is a passion of mine. There's no job out there that's 100% well, they're all rewarding in their own right, but there's no job out there that you're like, oh my gosh, I love my job every day. No. I mean, even as a clinical instructor, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm so over this. I'll be glad when the semester is over. You will have that same burnout as students have. So at the beginning semester, we're usually all fresh, gung-ho, spry, and ready to start the semester. By Christmas, we need a break. So you see, you get tired, and that's the same thing that happens with the students as well as with the faculty. You're just tired. You know, you're tired and you're just wore out. And that's normal to have, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we just keep pushing things like that. So hopefully I answered his questions. I think I was pretty thorough. I can't think of anything else that kind of ties into the role. I'm sure there are a few more things that I probably have missed, but if you have specific questions, definitely comment those below. But I thank you for sending me that question, because that is an excellent question. I've always wanted to figure out what else I could do when it comes to nursing education besides, you know, my postpartum stuff. Thank you for that question, because I don't know why I never thought about that. But this is the day or the schedule or how a nurse educator pretty much works. And again, there may be some things that I'm missing. And so if I am, I apologize. But I think that's the gist of what you do in a week, school year of a nurse educator. So hopefully this video has been insightful for the person who asked the question, as well as anybody else who wanted to know, you know, behind the scenes of what does a nurse educator do? What is their schedule like? They're very busy. But, you know, the caveat to that also is, you know, of course you can make more money in the clinical setting, meaning in the hospital setting or a clinic or things like that. But with that being said, you also, when it comes to education, don't work nights in terms of like clocking in somewhere. You may have to grade papers, but you're at home usually when you're doing that. You don't work nights. You don't work weekends. Again, I'm talking about clocking in somewhere. You may decide to grade your papers on the weekends or whatever. You don't work holidays. You get your breaks. And again, you only have to work 9 months out of the 12 months. So imagine getting about off 3 months plus your other breaks. That's actually great. It's a good trade-off, for at least for me. Why would I want to go into education? Well, for one, I have a passion for it and I love it. I've always loved education. But number two, I do have small children. I have little boys that are 11 and 8. And for me, it allows me enough flexibility to be home with them when I need to be home with them, travel with them, have them do extracurricular activities that I don't have to worry about. Oh, did I schedule myself at the hospital? I can't do this, that, and the other. Which, by the way, I'm still working PRN at the hospital. That has not changed. And for right now, it won't change. I want to, again, keep my skills abreast as best I can by working in the hospital. That is a trade-off. A lot of people quit working bedside or the clinical side once they come into academia. And when they do that, they lose their skills. And so, therefore, to me, how well are you teaching students something that you don't do? Especially if you're teaching a class that has a specialty and a clinical component to it. Now, if you're teaching your students leadership, that's something you could probably go to a seminar or take conferences and webinars and things like that to stay abreast on. But when it comes to actually taking your students to clinical skills and teaching them the lay of the land in the hospital, to me, it's better to go ahead and still have current practice, which is what I'm doing. So anyway, thank you for watching this video in its entirety. If you have more questions or concerns, you can always email me. The email will be down in the comment or the description box. You can also follow me on my social media platform of IG. It's going to be over here or over here, and it's also in the banner above. It will also be in the box below. Until the next time, you all take care. Bye-bye.